So there's a skunk in the chicken coop and there's a cat in a tree.
Correct.
Got it. Okay.
Welcome to Book Talk Etc., a podcast bound to grow your TBR. I'm Tina from TBR Etc.
And I'm Hannah from Handpicked Books.
This is a conversational podcast about books and more from two Midwest mood readers. We're easily distracted by new releases. And today we're sharing our October Books on the Radar.
If you enjoy listening, we'd love for you to follow us on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast app. And if you have a quick minute, please consider leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts or sharing us on social media. It truly helps us connect with other book lovers.
Hi, Hannah.
Hi, Tina. How's it going?
Great. We just had a big, long chat. We're doing some end of the year planning for the podcast, which is so fun. I love planning in general. Like, I think I like to dwell in possibility. So yeah, it's really fun. We picked our community reads and, just had some other good chats.
Yeah, especially book planning. Planning is the best planning.
Jeez. It's half of reading for me and for you probably as well. And it's
exactly
what our show is about today. Because these are some of the books that we're planning to read in October. As we head into spooky season, what do you think? Are you feeling more horror? Are you feeling mystery? Just sort of in general reads? Or what are you thinking?
Yes. So this is the problem of being a mood reader, because if you were to have asked me this question 2 weeks ago, I would have said that I am feeling cozy books. I'm feeling like I just want to read like fall romances. I want to read maybe some cozy campus novels. Whereas now, especially planning for this October Books on the Radar episode, I'm seeing all of these scarier horror books that are coming out soon. And now that's what I'm in the mood for. So who knows, maybe a mix, but how about you?
Sort of a mix. Definitely want to incorporate a little bit of horror, but it's like funny. I come up with this horror like TBR every year in September. By the time October hits, I'm like, I think I'm ready for something different.
Historical fiction, long literary book, something different. Yeah.
Again, I love to dwell in possibility, but a little bit of what we're talking about today for our book talk is that it's the end of the third quarter of the year. We're heading into the last quarter of 2024. So we're going to share a little bit of, reading plans and things like that. But first, in order to achieve our very ambitious reading plans, we have to talk about our loving lately and get it out of our system, because Lord knows it's taken our lives by storm. We're doing something we've never done before, Hannah and I. We have a joint loving lately. Would you care to share with the class?
Yes, I will share. It's a loving lately that I believe that we're sharing with many people in the world right now, and that is The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, the reality show that aired in early September on Hulu.
And before you turn away, I think we wanted to bring this as a joint one because, of course, it is something we were both loving, but I was surprised, Hannah, that you started watching it, because you're not the one that's typically overly invested in reality TV.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised that I got into it too, but I used to work for an influencer agency a while back, and we had some contracts with a couple of the key people on the show. One of those contracts had to get canceled because of the whole scandal that happened.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So I had kind of a personal connection to it a little bit. And I think as someone who is pretty chronically online, I had seen a lot of their TikToks and stuff before I even knew about the show. And so because I already had that background, it made me more interested in, learning more.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, because I was so baffled. I'm like, oh, come on in. I mean, I'm, reality TV
Join the
watching
party.
is a welcome. Yeah, we're an inclusive group. But yeah, I was curious what made you pick it up, so to speak. But that makes a lot of sense. If you're not familiar, this is a reality show, of course, that has taken the reality TV world by storm. It's about a group of young women who live in Salt Lake City and make a ton of money doing TikToks. They call themselves Mom Talk. That's the name of their group. I was vaguely familiar with these ladies from TikTok, just sort of by osmosis. They would come up on my For You page.
Yes.
I wasn't planning on watching it rather, until my neighbor texted me. She's like, Tina, are you watching? And it was literally the second day. She's like, I have to talk to you about it. And so it's one of those shows where you definitely want to talk with somebody about it. I don't know that you need to know too much about who they are. You sort of figure that
Hmm.
out as the story unfolds. What I think is really interesting, though, it's a short series, maybe 8 or so episodes. I'm not looking right now, but it's not terribly
It's
long.
8. That's
It's
right.
8. But what's cool is that the first episode was shot, I think, at many months prior, and you come to meet the people, and then a big, big kind of explosive ending happens at the end of the first episode, to the point where I was like, is this a teaser? How did all of this happen in one episode? How long have I been
Right.
sitting here? Because I was riveted.
Seems
And
like a
a lot of
season finale or
it
something.
did. So
Yeah.
because of this scandal that happened, they pick up several months later. And so you sort of
Yes.
get to see in one season of the show the growth of the people on it.
Mhm.
And so it's very popular now. Probably by the time this episode comes out, people will be like, okay, we're over it now. But as we're recording it, it's still very much in the zeitgeist. Something that I will say though, and I wanted to say this on my podcast, I hate when I see, when things get super popular, of course, you're going to have people that hate on it. But I don't like when people say things like this is garbage television or imply that people that watch it are garbage humans and like, we're not critical thinkers, because I honestly think that I find it fascinating because I love psychology. I studied
Mhm.
psychology and I can be a critical consumer. And I don't assume that the people on this show represent all of Mormonism, because I think many of them, if not all, are Mormon. It's kind of like fiction reading to me. I love to see what's happening. I also can do and take things that I'm seeing with a grain of salt. I know that this sometimes is manufactured and sometimes they have to reshoot scenes, and how sometimes things are manipulated by the producers. However, I think they are real people. And so it's sort of
Mhm.
interesting to see that dynamic. And I personally like to be a part of the conversation. So when I'm
Yeah.
seeing some of these videos come up, I think it's interesting. And I also like reality TV because sometimes I learn about cultures or communities that I otherwise wouldn't know about. And I'm like, okay, this is interesting. Again, understanding this is a very small subset, but it's sort of like qualitative research where you're like learning about a couple people and like, seeing what they're portraying. And it made me interested sort of just in this group in general. So I don't know. Wanted to say that, there is something deeper than sometimes it's just fun to have a brain break, but sometimes I think it's, means more than that, at least to me.
Yeah, and there's a difference between easy to digest and trash. I mean, that's
Yeah.
completely different. And I think that you touched on something that I felt like was different about this show than other reality TV shows that I watch, is that there was something a little bit deeper. There were conversations about female friendship, about, religion and how that can even impact your friendship and relationships with people.
Yes.
And I also thought that it brought into the conversation just how even diverse the spectrum can be within one religion.
Mhm.
And I mean, you have people who are more on this like progressive end, and then people who are more on this conservative end, and they're friends together.
Yeah.
And there are conversations about, respecting each other's beliefs, and when is it respecting your beliefs and when is it a problem.
Yeah.
And I thought that those conversations were really good and very relevant. And so those were also some things that I enjoyed about it as well.
Yeah, that's a great point because there isn't one right way, even in the show. And you get to see some of these
Mhm.
women have conflict with each other, but also with their spouses. And
Mhm.
I mean, it's real. That is real stuff that's happening to
There's some
them.
serious tension, yeah.
I think what's interesting about watching this show in particular, too, is that now that it's airing, you still see these women on social media. It's sort
I
of
know.
them responding to it. And you don't get that with other social media or other like programs that I watch, like Real Housewives. You get it a little bit, or like even like my competition shows like Top Chef, you get it a little bit, but this is like
Yeah.
a part of their content is having been on the show, which I just think is fascinating.
Yeah.
So if you also are invested in the Mormon Wives show like us and you want to chat with somebody about it, feel free to message one or both of us. We were chatting about it a bit before we started recording, but our joint loving lately today was The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives on Hulu.
Yeah.
All right, with that, we can transition into our latest reads. I'm very excited about mine. It is a book that I had previously brought as a book on the radar, so I'm feeling very good about that. It's Entitlement by Ruman Alam. And I will say out of the gate that this will not be for everyone, but it was definitely for me. It's sort of hard to explain. And that is, I think, typical with Ruman Alam's writing. It's not about a lot, but when you're reading it, it's sort of a book, at least for me, if you like his writing style, you won't be able to put it down. It is an exploration of extreme wealth and how it bends the lives of those close to it. It's about this Black woman named Brooke. She gets this job working with a billionaire octogenarian, and he is dead set on giving away his vast fortune. And so she is on the team that works with him in philanthropy. And she sort of comes from this background. She's adopted, and her brother is doing all the things, quote unquote, the right way. He's getting married and this and that. She is feeling like she wants to make her own way and wants to make a difference and ultimately wants to impress her mother. And she also wants independence and, all the things I think normal sort of early to mid 20 somethings want. She's really proud of this job, but they sort of see it as frivolous, which is irritating to her. And so a lot of the book centers on that. And it's about her sort of coming into this world that she previously had no knowledge of. She also has, I shouldn't say no knowledge, because she also has two friends that also come from money. So she's sort of feeling like, okay, finally, this is my way in. This is my way to get to the next level. But soon Brooke starts laying claim to the life that she's always wanted. She's getting more expensive clothes, fancy meals, an apartment, and she feels she deserves it. She feels she's doing meaningful work that will help people, and she thinks she is special because Asher Jaffe, the billionaire, has named her his protege. And so I don't know how else to describe this book. I'm sort of struggling with it because the title is very apt. It's all about entitlement. It's about who deserves what. If you like stories set in Manhattan, set in New York, you'll get that here. It's about legacy. It's about money. It's about the less than 1%. It's also a book that has very unlikable characters, which I tend to like. She's complex and she sort of feels real for that reason. And I would say if you like books that are all vibes, no plot, this could work. I think the author does really interesting things with race and socioeconomic status in this. And it's interesting to see the things that Brooke gets judged for that are sort of known as the status quo for the white male billionaire. And I think it's really interesting. By looking at this one woman, you're sort of looking at these bigger themes. It's a book that had me laughing and cringing at the same time. And overall, I enjoyed my reading experience. If you like Kylie Reid's books, I think you might like this. It was very reminiscent of her style with that overly detailed writing. This was Entitlement by Ruman Alam.
I'm glad that you brought up kind of like that overly detailed writing because I'm going to segue into my latest read with something really similar. And I have something to kind of share and speak on about that too. So I'm glad that you brought that up with this specific book. My latest read is Same as It Ever Was by Claire Lombardo. And this was one that was on my summer bonanza. And I really wanted to make an effort to finally get to this one before the summer is over. As we're recording, it's one day till fall. So I did it. And I am so glad that I made it happen. This is a family drama that is really about the fragility of a long marriage. At 57, Julia Ames seems to have an idyllic life with a loving husband and two happy children. However, a chance encounter with an old friend who is deeply associated with the almost destruction of her marriage years ago forces her to question her own happiness now. As her son drops a bomb and her daughter prepares to leave for college, Julia is thrown into emotional turmoil, and we are thrown into that turmoil with her. She confronts her past, navigates a complex daughter in law, and the return of her estranged mother, and the temptation to rekindle an old relationship. This book spans decades, exploring Julia's life and the struggle to keep her family intact. First of all, I want more books about women in their 50s and their 60s. I thought that exploring this season of life and family and relationships was really interesting and emotionally moving and impactful. Claire has a way of describing really highly specific human experiences and making you laugh, cry, and wonder why no one else has been able to explain it so well and beautifully and accurately. She's also able to create highly realistic dialogue. And the conversations between Julia and her husband were so insightful and reminded me so much of conversations that I have with my husband at times, including the internal monologues of things that I think about in between the words that actually come out of my mouth when I'm talking or even arguing with my husband or someone that I love. It was just really, really well done. And it feels like this is someone who thinks about her conversations and her relationships a lot. I was just really impressed by the insightfulness that Claire had with these conversations and dialogue in particular. And I thought that it was one of the best parts about this book. I have heard people say that they really feel like nothing happens in this one, that it's overwritten, it didn't need to be so long, or that they couldn't make it through and that they DNF'd it. I've seen a lot of people DNF this one. And while I'm a huge proponent of DNFing and totally understand why this book would not work for so many readers, this made me think about something that I previously touched on, Tina, when you were talking about entitlement, that Sarah from Fiction Matters actually discussed in a recent Substack of hers about literary maximalism. And does everything in a book need to be necessary to the plot and the story to be important to the overall message or enjoyment of the book? And the whole Substack was really good. And I highly encourage you to read her Substack and subscribe if you love to dive deeper into topics like this. But I thought that this book was a really good example of how an author can utilize literary maximalism, if you will, and immerse the reader into a life that they've never experienced, or maybe they have, but they've never been able to articulate it before in a way that made them feel understood and seen. And you can't do that when you're only writing what's necessary to propel the plot. So that is what I really liked about this one. I think if you like family stories and books that really explore relationships like marriage or even character studies, that you should really try to give this one a shot. If you couldn't tell, I loved this book. It will probably end up being on my favorites list for the end of the year. I have no doubts about that. And that is Same as It Ever Was by Claire Lombardo.
You did such a good job selling that, and I agree. I would love more books with protagonists that are even like they're many times not older than 30 something. So
Exactly. Yeah.
I will continue to seek that out. I'm glad that you brought that one up. You had planned on finishing it for this season, and it ties in nicely to what we're doing today for book talk because it is the third quarter of 2024. It's coming to a close, or it's already closed. But anyway, you know how it goes. So we wanted to take stock of our reading year so far and discuss our end of the year plans. So we've got 3 months left in the year, October, November, December.
That's right.
And I'm feeling pretty proud because usually I set goals at the beginning of the year and immediately forget about them. So this is my way of holding myself accountable. So to prep for this episode, we took stock of the books we've read so far and related it back to the goals we set for ourselves for 2024. So I was curious, I'm like, what did I set for myself? And I remember that Renee and I, back in the end of 2023, shared a bonus episode for our patrons, and we shared reading intentions. And I had said my reading intentions were to read more historical fiction, to read more TMS books, because those had been working. And TMS is what I call my thriller, mystery, suspense, to read more debuts, and to work on seasonal reading. And I will say I've been doing pretty well so far. Historical fiction, I finished 11 this year. My average rating is 4.5, which is incredible. I'm
That's
like,
really good.
I need to pay attention to that and continue picking up historical fiction because I'm doing really well with those. Also, thriller, mystery, suspense has been decent, not the best genre for me this year. Probably not as good as last year, but still pretty good. And the one that surprised me was debut. I finished 24 debuts so far this year, and I've given it an average of 4.2, which is high. And there are some real standout for debut books for me. I also wanted to make it a priority to write my goals down and to look back to them and to finish 120 books, which I'm on track to do. I've finished 92 so far as of this recording.
That
So
is
I'll
so
pause.
many.
It's so
Nice.
many. No one needs to read that many. It's silly. But again, it's a occupational hazard. What about you?
So I was just looking and I really didn't set a ton of goals for myself at the beginning of the year. I did not know that this year was going to end up looking like it did with, joining the podcast and
Sure.
kind of making reading a little bit more, I don't want to say intentional because I'm always intentional about my reading, but it was a little bit different, obviously, when I came onto the
Mhm.
podcast in a good way. But I remember at the beginning of the year when I was kind of putting together my reading goals, I was like, this is going to be the year that I am just so loosey goosey. Like, I'm just not going to,
Uh-huh.
worry about it. I'll read when I want to, read if I want to. And I think that was partially because I was just not wanting to set up reading goals. But then
Sure.
obviously
And it's fair.
yeah, but then, I ended up making my reading an even bigger part of my life, which is great. And I am so thankful for that. But I don't have like a ton of stuff to share in terms of what
Yeah.
my goals were at the beginning of the year. I
And
did have
that's
two though.
okay. Okay.
I did have two. One of them was to read 75 books, which was actually to lower my reading goal, but I'm already at 70. So I'm probably going to hit somewhere around 100, which I feel like is a great pace, and I'm happy with that. And again, occupational hazard, I think that makes sense that I'm ahead of schedule. And I also wanted to read more translated books and be intentional about reading stories in countries that I haven't read before or haven't read
Yes.
that much of before. And that is definitely something that I have done and made an effort to do, which I think I shared about in a previous episode as well. So those were my two goals. And as it sits right now, I have read books set in or authored by authors from these countries: Argentina, Australia, Canada, Denmark, France, India, Iran, Ireland, Jamaica, Japan, South Korea, and then the US and the UK. So I feel like I'm
That's
doing,
pretty good.
yeah, pretty good. I am hopeful to add a book by an Icelandic author that's on my TBR for the fall and add that to
Mhm.
this list. But otherwise, I'd love to add a few more countries to this list by the end of the year.
I think those are great goals. And like I have probably too many goals. I think that even those reading intentions that I set was a scaled down version of what I normally try and do for myself. But all of this to say, I have thoughts on how I want the rest of my year to look. And what I've changed from the beginning of this year to now is using and really leaning into my TBR and being specific about the books that I want to read. And I share this on the podcast where I'm doing my Goodreads thing where I have my long list where I can add anything I want, but I also have my short list, my TBR short list that I'm like, okay, these are the ones I want to prioritize. I'm also making it a priority to take them off the list if I try them and they're not working. So that way I still know how I felt about it. So I feel like I achieved something. Like I'm like, okay, they're not on the list anymore. You've processed them. You've gotten through them. Yeah, those are good goals. And I think to your point about not wanting to be too fussy about it, I think that's important because then it starts to feel like work, even if it is part of, what we do. I think it's important to just do what feels right, do what's bringing you joy, all of those things. But
Whatever's blowing our hair back.
whatever's pulling your hair back. We do encourage you though to take a look at your reading life, your reading year so far and see like, okay, what has been working, what hasn't. It's just a reminder, a light reminder to look at your reading goals that you set for yourself and see where you're at.
Yeah. And I think it's as a mood reader, especially, I do feel like kind of every quarter or every season, if you will, those goals do shift a little bit. One thing that is something that I say to myself a lot is when I set a goal for myself, especially as it pertains to reading, which is supposed to be fun and this, hobby that I have in my life, is that it can change. Nothing is permanent. And if I set a goal
Mhm.
for myself, I can change it later and make a new goal or adjust the goal. And it can be fun to have something to work toward. But if it's stressing you out, you can adjust it, you can amend it. This is, not a life or death situation. And so I think that's definitely a reminder that I need every once in a while. On that note, we are going to keep our book talk short and sweet today. We are kind of going back and forth, Tina and I, on doing the book talk segment for our Books on the Radar episodes and talking about if we want to continue to do book talk for these episodes or if we want to each bring 5 books for our Books on the Radar. For now, we're going to do a short book talk for you since we haven't really decided exactly what we're going to do with this yet, but we're still each going to bring 5 books for our October Books on the Radar. If you have any thoughts on what you prefer, please let us know because we always appreciate your feedback and want to take that into consideration in terms of decisions that we make for the podcast moving forward. But for today, we're going to do a short and sweet book talk and pop into our October books on the radar, in which you are going to get 10 books to add to your October TBRs today.
I love it. Just what they need. More books for their TBRs, right? But there are
Absolutely.
so many books. I actually
There
was having a
are.
hard time narrowing it down. So I think this will be a good thing.
Yeah, me too.
I will start with the first one that I have on my list. It's Society of Lies by Lauren Ling Brown. This one comes out on October 1st by Bantam. This is dark academia that asks the question, how far would you go to belong? Maya has returned to Princeton for her college reunion, and it's been a decade since she graduated. She's looking forward to seeing old faces and reminiscing about her time there. This visit is special because Maya will also be attending the graduation of her little sister, Naomi. But what should have been a dream weekend becomes Maya's worst nightmare when she receives the news that Naomi has died. The police are calling it an accident, but Maya suspects that there is more to the story than they are letting on. And as she pieces together what happened in the months leading up to her sister's death, she begins to realize how much Naomi hid from her. Despite Maya's warnings, Naomi had joined Sterling Club, the most exclusive social club on campus, and the same one Maya belonged to. And if she had to guess, Naomi was likely tapped for the secret society within it. The more Maya uncovers, the more terrified she becomes that Naomi's decision to follow in her footsteps might have been what got her killed. Because Maya's time at Princeton wasn't as wonderful as she's always made it seem. After all, her sister wasn't the first young woman to turn up dead. And now every clue is leading Maya back to the past and to the secret she's kept all these years. What's not to like? I love a secret society. We love a campus novel. It's like, I think, a bit dark academia. There's secrets. And I'm curious to know what she's going to uncover. I've heard a couple good early reviews for this one, so hopefully it is a winner and definitely one that would be great for a TBR for this time of year. That one was Society of Lies by Lauren Ling Brown.
Good one. That one was not on my radar at
Ooh,
all. So adding a book to my radar.
love that.
I love that. And exactly. It sounds like it's one that's going to be perfect for this time of year. I love a campus novel or something dark academia to read in the fall. So that sounds perfect. My first book on the radar is also, I feel like, going to be perfect for this season. And that is Haunted States by Miranda Corcoran. And that comes out on October 8th from Repeater Books, which is a publisher that I haven't heard of before. But this one sounds really interesting. This is nonfiction, and it's a fusion of travel, literature, and cultural criticism, investigating the dark history of the US and exploring how past horrors, from witch trials to slavery and genocide, continue to haunt the national consciousness. This is supposed to be a guidebook that explores the dark history of the US based on the author's journey across the United States in summer of 2022. It explores various locations connected to Gothic fiction and film as well. So I think, movie nerds and book nerds alike might enjoy this one too, because it sounds like there's going to be some media tie-ins. She also tracks the relationship between the American landscapes and the various forms of fictional horror that the nation has produced over the centuries. So this one sounds really interesting. I've never really read a book like this before, a piece of travel literature and cultural criticism, but this one sounds really interesting. And like I mentioned, kind of perfect for this time of year. So I'm curious to give it a go. And that is Haunted States by Miranda Corcoran. And that comes out on October 8th.
That is not one I had heard of.
Yeah.
I love that. I love when this happens. Okay.
I just found it on NetGalley. So
there we go. This one is one that I just discovered on NetGalley randomly. I've had it approved forever. It's called My Darlings by Marie Still. Comes out on October 8th. And it's from Rising Action Publishing, which is an independent publisher. What got me is that it's ABC's Desperate Housewives meets HBO's Dexter. I mean, yes, please.
Love Dexter.
I do too. And I loved Desperate Housewives. Oh my gosh, back in the day. So this is a dark thriller. It comes with a lot of content warnings, but it says no one was supposed to know. I've always been so careful. My darlings, how did we get here? Evil lurks behind the perfectly manicured lawns, ornate iron gates, and long winding driveways of the affluent DC suburbs, but not for long. Stay-at-home mom Eloise Williams is PTO president and a respected local philanthropist who sits on the boards of many distinguished charities. In addition to being a doting wife and mother, she's also a serial killer. But Eloise isn't the only lady in society playing a part. As the hidden lives of Eloise's inner circle are exposed, the body count rises. When stalkers become prey, Eloise desperately clings to control. Money and power can only buy influence and safety for so long. Eventually, the curtains lift, exposing the chilly reality hiding in plain sight. I don't know. I remember I read a few pages of this. I was sort of like going through my Kindle, not knowing when books came out. And I opened this and I was like, what? And I read this months ago, the first few pages. I was like, dang it, it doesn't come out until October. So I put it back, but I'm going to give it a shot here soon. That's My Darlings by Marie Still.
Ooh, it's nice that you've sampled that one a little bit and
A little bit.
have a little bit of excitement already for it.
Yes.
So my next book is for our literary fiction readers, and that is Our Evenings by Alan Hollinghurst. It also comes out on October 8th from Picador. This is a Booker Prize winning author. I've never read any of his books before, but I do think that he is beloved. And this novel explores modern England through the life of Dave Wynne, a man grappling with class, race, art, and his sexuality. This man was born to a British dressmaker and a Burmese father that he's never met, and he earns a scholarship to an elite boarding school at 13. So, more school settings. While new opportunities arise, he's exposed to the envy and cruelty of his wealthy peers, particularly a man named Giles Hadlow, whose parents sponsor his scholarship. The story spans Dave's life from the 1960s onward, from his time as a working class brown student and his exploration of queer culture and his career as an overlooked actor to his late life in marriage, bringing unexpected happiness. Meanwhile, Giles becomes a powerful right wing politician, and their conflicting lives eventually do collide and their paths cross once again, which, to my understanding, kind of propels the rest of the plot forward. This novel captures the beauty, pain, and complexity of one man's deeply observed life, moving between past and present England. I love books that explore themes through one person's lived experience, and I think that can be a really powerful way to tell a story. This sounds like the perfect introspective book to read this fall from an author that I haven't tried yet. So I am very eager to pick this one up, and that is Our Evenings by Alan Hollinghurst. And that comes out on October 8th.
I have to say I've not read that author either. I actually haven't even heard of them.
Yeah, I hadn't either, but apparently they've won some awards and things. So,
well, all right. It's so funny because we do these episodes and I'm like, I know so much about new releases. I know what Hannah's going to pick. No clue. No clue. I've been surprised so many times.
Me too. It's fun though.
Right. It is. This one I know you know is on my list. It is Framed.
Yes.
Astonishing True Stories of Wrongful Convictions by John Grisham and Jim McCloskey. Pardon me. I cannot wait. It is John Grisham's first work of nonfiction since The Innocent Man. This comes out on October 15th from Doubleday.
I like that publisher.
I do too. And I wasn't aware of Jim McCloskey, but he is, quote, the godfather of the innocence movement. And they are sharing 10 harrowing true stories of wrongful convictions. And this John Grisham, we know John Grisham, right? He's known for his best-selling legal novels, but it's his real-life passion for justice that led him to work with Jim McCloskey of Centurion Ministries, the first organization dedicated to exonerating innocent people who have been wrongly convicted. Together, they offer an inside look at the many injustices of our criminal justice system. A fundamental principle of our legal system is a presumption of innocence, but once someone has been found guilty, there is very little room to prove doubt. These 10 true stories shed light on Americans who were innocent but found guilty and forced to sacrifice friends, families, and decades of their lives to prison, while the guilty parties remained free. In each of these stories, John Grisham and Jim McCloskey recount the dramatic, hard-fought battles for exoneration. And they take a close look at what leads to wrongful convictions in the first place and the racism, misconduct, flawed testimony, and corruption in the court system that can make them so hard to reverse. This is supposed to be impeccably researched, told with page-turning suspense, and it's making me sad to read this, actually, because I read a story this morning. There's a young man in Missouri who is actually on death row, and the prosecutor has called for him to be released because they feel like he didn't do it, this and that, and he doesn't have that much time left, and the judge denied it. So if I can find that, I will link to it because I'm just sort of thinking, God, this happens way too often.
Yeah.
And it's devastating. I mean, stories like these are just, this is the real horror stories, right? But I want to pay attention to it. I'm curious. I want to see what they have to say. This is Framed by John Grisham and Jim McCloskey.
Yeah, that one sounds really interesting. I've never read a John Grisham ever.
What?
Not a
Oh
single
my
one.
God. What? Oh my
Not a
God. I've
single
read
one.
like 100. Well, not 100, but I've read many, many, many.
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
I
Fun.
had Cold Mountain, I think, that blue one,
Yes.
the
Yes.
older one on my
Uh-huh.
TBR a while back, but I never
That's a
ended up
good book.
reading it. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I've heard. I think it's set in the Blue Ridge Mountains.
I think you're right.
And I remember I was book browsing with a couple of my friends in Asheville, North Carolina, which Asheville is in the Blue Ridge Mountains. And that's what those mountains are called, right? I lived in
Blue
North
Hill,
Carolina for
Blue Ridge.
a while. Blue Ridge, I think that's right. Anyway,
Yeah. Yeah,
it's
those
set
Blue
there.
Ridges.
But we found that book in a bookstore, like in a used bookstore. And we had like this moment where we were all being kind of silly and we'd had some wine and we were looking at the book and we were like, oh, I think that's the Blue Ridge Mountains and we're there right now. And we were looking at that cover and it was just
It
a
was
goofy moment.
a good moment. Yeah.
A good little bookish moment.
A good bookish moment.
But I didn't buy it.
Anyway.
So anyway, my next book is one that I think you might have on your list, Tina, and that is Memorials by Richard Chismar.
Indeed, I do not.
Okay. Okay. So this is a horror novel. This comes out on October 22nd from Gallery. And this book, based on the synopsis, has a lot of things that I tend to really like. This is about a group of students who encounter a supernatural terror on a road trip through the Appalachia. It's 1983. 3 college students are setting out to film a documentary on roadside memorials for their American Studies class. What begins as a fun adventure quickly turns eerie as they venture deeper into the Appalachian backwoods. The memorials feature a strange, unsettling symbol, and the students begin to suspect that they are being followed. As paranoia grows and their vehicle is tampered with, they start to question if these roadside deaths were really accidents or if something terrifying is at play. So I love books about like documentaries and podcasts. It's kind of a popular trend that I'm seeing right now in general. I don't mind it. I think that it's fun. And I also love a road trip novel, which is a very specific thing. But if there's a road trip tie-in to a book, I just think that sounds really compelling. And I tend to like books with that element. So this one sounds really interesting. And I think I'm going to get to this one very soon. So stay tuned. And that is Memorials by Richard Chismar. And that comes out on October 22nd.
Awesome. Have you read that author before?
No, but I do know that they have another book on my TBR.
Is it with Stephen King?
I
Gwendy's
can't remember.
Buttonbox?
Oh, no, but I haven't read that one either. It's Chasing the Boogeyman.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
And then
exactly
that has a sequel, Becoming the Boogeyman. Those are 2 books that are on my TBR as well. But I think that I'm more excited for this new one.
It sounds really good. It sounds kind of right up your alley, like you said.
Yes, for sure.
All right. This next one I feel like could be on your list. It's This Cursed House by Del Sandine by Berkeley. Comes out on October 8th.
Yeah, it definitely was one that I was considering.
Okay.
But you had given me a little bit of a sneak peek and you had mentioned this one. So but this is definitely one that I'm excited for. Yes.
That's right. All right. It's a Southern Gothic horror debut about a young Black woman who abandons her life in 1960s Chicago for a position with a mysterious family in New Orleans, only to discover the dark truth. They're under a curse and they think she can break it. That's it. I don't need anything else. But if you need a little more, it's set in the fall of 1962. 27-year-old Gemma Barker is desperate to escape her life in Chicago and the spirits she's always been able to see. She gets this unexpected job offer from the Duchamp family in New Orleans, and she accepts, thinking it's her chance to start over. But she discovers that this family is not what they seem. They're light enough to pass as white, and the Black family members look down on brown-skinned Gemma. Their tenuous hold on reality extends to all the members of their eccentric clan, from the haughty grandmother Honorée to the beautiful yet inscrutable cousin Fossette. And soon the shocking truth comes out. The Duchamps are under a curse and they think Gemma has the power to break it. As Gemma wrestles with the gifts she's run from all her life, she unravels deeper and more disturbing secrets about this mysterious family. And these secrets stretch over a century. And these secrets will bind her to their fate if she fails. I don't know. I think it sounds really good. I like a gothic. I like the setting. I'm intrigued. That's This Cursed House by Del Sandine.
Yes, that is definitely one that I am excited about as well. And I'm looking forward to hearing you talk about it if you read it here soon. I am going to take a little bit of a left turn and move into some cozy October reading, if that is
Yay.
more your vibe. And that is The Healing Season of Pottery by Yeon Somin with Claire Richards. So this is a translated book. It comes out on October 22nd from Algonquin. This is about a woman who is burned out from her job as a TV news writer. Jung Min suddenly quits, seeking solitude to piece her life back together. One day, she discovers a small, plant-filled pottery studio in her neighborhood and is drawn inside by the enigmatic teacher. Surrounded by the warmth, light, and the scent of clay, along with delicious coffee, Jungmin feels truly alive for the first time in months. Over the next year, she immerses herself in pottery, slowly rebuilding her sense of self while forming surprising connections with the studio's other members, each working through their own struggles at the wheel. She grows especially close to one student whose relationship is unraveling, and they begin to lean on each other more deeply. As winter approaches with snow piling up outside the studio, Jungmin realizes how much she has changed and begins to consider the possibility of love again. But she has to decide whether she's going to stay in her newfound comfort or take a leap. This is an English debut from a Korean author. And I think it sounds like a great option for fall reading if you're not as into the spooky, scary skeleton type of books. So I wanted to make sure that it was on your radar if you're feeling kind of more of the fall cottagecore cozy type of read this autumn season. I tend to gravitate towards both. So this is one that I'm also looking forward to alongside my other darker books that I will be reading this season as well. So I'm really excited about this one. And that is The Healing Season of Pottery by Yeon Somin with Claire Richards. And that comes out on October 22nd.
I thought you were going to take up pottery. I thought you were going to tell me this was nonfiction and you were just about
I
to
know.
embark on a whole new avenue.
Journey.
Yeah.
Well, it wouldn't be unlike me to hobby hop, but not yet. One of my sisters is really good at pottery, and she's been trying to get me to join her with her classes for a long time, but I think I would have a really hard time sensory wise.
I took the class in college because I went to a liberal arts school and you had to take art, and I took pottery or ceramics. I hated it. I hated it so much because you have to be precise. It's really messy. And two things, I'm not precise and I hate my hands being messy. So
I hate my hands being messy too.
I struggled in that course, but my mom still has a bowl I made, which I think is really cute.
Oh, that is really cute.
Thanks, Mom.
Well, I'm going to, I think for now, just take her mugs and plates and call it a day.
I think that's reasonable.
Yeah.
All right. My last book, and you're not going to be surprised if you follow me on social media because my last book is The Blue Hour by Paula Hawkins. Comes out on October 29th by Mariner Books. And I was so excited. Mariner was nice enough to send me a box with a sweater in it that has a funny saying on it that says, "Being sane is a trap," or something like that. And I saw it on someone else's post and I commented, "Oh my God, I need that sweater." And they sent it to me. So I was really, really happy about that. But I'm also very excited for this book. Yeah, it was. I'm curious. Okay. So we know Paula Hawkins, right? She is the author of The Girl on the Train and some others. And I think I'm a completist actually at this point. I've read all of her books. So this is set on an isolated Scottish island, which is accessible to the mainland only 12 hours a day. A famous, and some might say infamous, artist whose notoriously unfaithful husband disappeared after visiting her 20 years ago. You got the island, you got the artist, and now a present-day discovery that intimately connects three people and unveils a web of secrets and lies. So the island is named Eris. It's an island with only one house, one inhabitant, and one way out, unreachable from the Scottish mainland for 12 hours a day. Once home to Vanessa, a famous artist whose husband disappeared 20 years ago, but now is home to Grace, a solitary creature of the tides, content in her own isolation. But when a shocking discovery is made at an art gallery far away in London, a visitor comes calling, and the secrets of Eris threaten to emerge. Guys, I don't know what this is about. I have to tell you. All I know is there is one house on this little island, and there is an artist that lives there. There's secrets, and that's plenty for me. I know we're going to get unreliable narration. I know it's going to most likely be polarizing for readers, and that is so fine for me because I like that sort of reading experience. It's a lot that's going to be revealed, and I have a feeling it's going to be more vibes than plot, which for me is perfect this time of year. This one's The Blue Hour by Paula Hawkins.
Yeah, I have only read one book by Paula Hawkins, and it wasn't The Girl on the Train.
Was it Into the Water?
Oh, maybe I haven't read a book by Paula Hawkins before. I'm like sitting here like, yeah, the only book, and then I haven't. Oh, no, I did. That's right. It was one of her more recent releases, A Slow Fire Burning.
Yes, I did read that one.
I liked that one.
I did too. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would be interested in reading more from her. And then I forgot I have one more. I accidentally went out of publication order.
Oh.
Because I accidentally skipped one. Sorry.
No worries.
Okay, so my last book is one that, Tina, I'm sure you know is on my radar as well, one that I'm very excited for, and that is American Rapture by C.J. Lead.
Oh, yes. This is one I saw. I said, goodbye. This is Hannah's.
Well, thank you. I am really stoked for this one. It comes out on October 15th from Tor Nightfire. And this has so many components to it that I'm very excited about. This is about a virus that is spreading across America, transforming the infected and making them feral with lust.
Oh, God.
So I know, but if you've read Maeve Fly, it makes sense. So Sophie is a good Catholic girl who must traverse the hellscape of the Midwest to try to find her family while the world around her burns. Along the way, she discovers there are far worse fates than dying a virgin. That is the synopsis. That's it. That's all we get. A lot of things here. I love synopses that do give you so little because I feel like there's so much opportunity to get surprised along the way. And I love that. I love post-apocalyptic stories. I like weird fiction. I love books set in the Midwest. And I know I already trust CJ Lead because I loved Maeve Fly earlier this year, which makes me extra excited to see what she's going to do with a book that seems so different from her previous work. So I will definitely be reading this soon. I have it ready to go on my Kindle, and that is American Rapture by CJ Lead, coming out on October 15th.
And talk about a cover. That is so gorgeous.
It's so nice.
It's so
pretty.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I love the title of it too. American Rapture. I don't know.
It's a good title. I sort of like any book with American something in the title. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Like I can think of a lot of examples, or even not American, like Victorian Weirdos or whatever that book was that I brought last week.
Victorian Psychos.
Victorian Psycho. I just like it. Yeah. It's a rememberer. It's a rememberer.
It's a rememberer. All right. And on that note, let's wrap it up.
It's noteworthy. We will wrap things up with our current reads. The book that I'm reading right now is Horror Movie by Paul Tremblay. And I'm really excited. I grabbed the audio of this. I like the author, and that's what made me add it to my list. But the audiobook is full cast, but largely narrated by Ari Falakos, who is my all-time favorite audiobook narrator. And I'm very excited. So far, so good. What about you?
I am currently reading Ace of Spades by Farida Abike-Amide. And this is one that came out a few years back, and I've been meaning to read it for a long time. It is kind of pitched as Gossip Girl meets Get Out. And so far, I think that that's a really fair comp. It's a campus novel, dark academia. It is set in high school. So this is YA, I think, technically. But I'm really enjoying it, even though I don't read a lot of young adult fiction. It feels perfect for this time of year, and I'm loving like the Gossip Girl type plot line. So yeah, I'm excited to see where this one goes. I'm about 50% through.
Well, we did it, folks. That's it for today. We thank you for spending a part of your day with us. Links to all the books mentioned can be found in the show notes. If you enjoyed today's episode, you can help us by following us wherever you listen and by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts. It helps us get our show out to new listeners and grows our audience. And don't forget, if you would like access to exclusive bonus content and community, you can join us for $5 a month on patreon.com/booktalk, etc.
If you'd like to connect with us, you can email us at booktalk.etc@gmail.com. You can also connect with us both at booktalk.etc on Instagram, and Tina at TBR, and Hannah at Handpicked Books. Talk to you next week. In the meantime, remember,
everything's better with books.
John, you work with two brilliant, shining women.
You're going to get a bonus this month.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. Okay. Make sure to whisper, take some vocal rest. I'll let you know how it goes with the cat in the tree and the chicken.
Please do.